Do you think that it's possible, as we overreact here, that something could happen as soon as this season if they determine that the fit just isn't right? Welcome to Beat Everyone. I'm Ben Flanagan. Okay, so Michael Casagrande of AL.com, columnist, excellent writer. You know him well. He's been on the show. Michael, welcome, right? We don't really know where to start here, or at least I don't. Alabama lost to Florida State, made us all look like goons picking him, all three of us on the previous episode. We all say it's going to be, a blowout, essentially. I was a little skeptical compared to the other guys. I was a little skeptical. Michael, I will say, I said Florida State would cover, and they did, right? But they win 31-17 in Tallahassee. It was a disaster opening game for Alabama's 2025 season. More specifically, to single him out, it was a disaster for head coach Kalen DeBoer in his second season when, Michael, everything looked great on paper going into this season, right? The roster shaping up. He's building a culture. Everybody is picking Alabama as not only a national championship contender, as a team to make the playoff, but as a possible national championship winner this season. They did not look the part against Florida State, a team that's coming off a 2-10 season. Alabama's knocking on the door to the playoffs, and so we know that Kalen DeBoer typically does well in his second season as a head coach. Not the case so far in 2025. Again, Michael, I don't know where we need to start necessarily, but you were critical of Alabama in your columns, plural, right? You had a lot to say about this game. And the first thing you wrote was Tommy Castellanos and all of his trash talk in Florida State, they punked Alabama and Tallahassee. Is there any other way to put it?
No, I mean, you couldn't. I mean, I don't know if any quarterback since Joe Namath has been more right about something that people laughed and mocked a quarterback about pre-game predictions. I pretty much mocked him in June when he wrote it. I pretty much patted him on the head and said, "That's cute. Thank you for giving us something to write about in the summertime because there's nothing to do. In June, there's nothing going on. So thank you, Tommy." And then he never backed down from it, and he delivered on Saturday. I mean, it was as redemptive of a moment as you could get for someone who everybody made fun of. And I'll be honest, I wasn't on the podcast for the preview episode. I was not one of the three who picked. I did pick Alabama to win, but I didn't pick them to cover because all week there was just something in my head. There were just little pieces, little things in my mind. I tweeted it right before the game. I was like, there was just something in there, just little puzzle pieces that were giving me doubt, giving me question marks. Just a few key injuries, important. The Gus Malzahn factor. I just kept thinking, like, this guy, I know it's a different defense, a whole different staff, a whole different everything, but there's just something about him. He comes around Alabama and he cooks. He had a whole off season to think about this. He never had that in those Iron Bowls. Improved skill players. He had Squirrel White, a Tennessee guy who had some big catches against Alabama in the past, had that first big third down conversion for Florida State. So there were all these little pieces that was like, I think Alabama's going to win, but I think it's going to be a better game than people are projecting. You're never sure about a first-time starting quarterback until that quarterback starts for the first time. I don't know if I necessarily saw the lack of toughness coming, the lack of intensity. I'm sure we'll talk about that. But when I was working on the headline of that first column, I was like, what other way can you say it? They got, in a family publication, punked is about the best word I could come up with because they just stuffed them in a locker like a nerd, like our producer, Matt Scalisi.
The roles were reversed, right? And the word soft has been used all over social media, on television, and what people are writing about Alabama. Soft. That's not a word that you could ever use or prescribe a Nick Saban team with, right? Toughness was always the word that you would use, and the roles were reversed. You heard people saying that, and you saw it on the field, Michael, that Florida State, they wanted to beat Alabama. They wanted to whip them. They played with passion. They played with intensity. Alabama didn't play that way. They came out with an amazing first drive, right? What, a 16-play drive with Ty Simpson in his first start as the Alabama quarterback, Ty Simpson was not the reason Alabama lost this game. Ty Simpson played pretty well. He didn't play great. He was open about it at the end of the game. So was Kalen DeBoer about things he could have done better. But that is so far down the list of things that Alabama fans or anybody else should concern themselves with about this game. Like, we can get into the details, Michael, but let's just start with the big picture here. I mean, Kalen DeBoer is who people are talking about now, and they're asking already, is he the right fit? Like, you have a column that's about how we overreact to things like this. And Alabama fans are probably guiltier than anybody in the country when it comes to overreactions, but that's okay. And I think that last year they spent an entire season convincing themselves that it was going to work with Kalen DeBoer, right? Like, this guy's an outsider, never coached in the SEC. He's somebody a lot of people had a passing familiarity with, or they didn't know him at all. And he comes in, he beats Georgia, and everybody's rah-rah about him. They think he's ahead of schedule, and maybe he really is the guy and one of the best coaches in the league. And then we obviously know what happened the rest of the year. He loses to 4 unranked opponents, or underdogs anyway, and now he's lost 5 of his last 10. They're 5-5 in their last 10. They've lost to 5 ranked opponents. Guy gets paid $10 million a year, has a huge contract. So, Michael, let's start with Kalen DeBoer. I'm not going to panic here and say, it's over. They need to move on. They got to fire him now. They got to rebuild. This is a total rebuild for Alabama. But I guess big picture, after one game, and remember, everybody, it's one game, and you've been told that, right, in a press conference, Michael. It's just one game, right? What are your thoughts on DeBoer here? Look through the DeBoer prism for me and tell me, like, where do we go with Kalen DeBoer now?
I think the big difference, I think, in my mind was for the first year and straight up and through Saturday, I would say everyone was trying to find all the reasons why it should work. And looking at the sunny side of, like, well, what he did at Washington, like year 2, what he did when he had a quarterback that he wanted, the style he wanted, the coordinator that he wanted in Ryan Grubb, all the reasons why it's going to be better than it was last year that people think. After Saturday, everyone's looking at all the reasons why it's not going to work, why he's not the right fit. He's the guy from South Dakota. He's never been here before. He never recruited here. He doesn't know anything about the area. He doesn't know about the pressure, the expectations. He's only been 2 years at a power conference school, and it was in Seattle, where it's Starbucks City. It's not Tuscaloosa. It's not the SEC. All the reasons why it's not going to work. And all those reasons were there before. And it's not that people didn't say him before, but like, those are ones being pushed to the forefront of the conversation now. And all those reasons why, what he did with Michael Penix, leading Washington to a national championship game, beating Texas on the way to there. All those things are not at the forefront of the conversation. So you're starting to lose the locals. You're starting to lose the benefit of the doubt, as I wrote, where, I was buying into it, not hook, line, and sinker, but I was, all these things make sense. All the off-season talk. He's got a full year, a full off-season, a normal off-season of preparation. It's not a fire drill of keeping recruits, keeping signees, keeping people from entering the transfer portal like the first year. He's not having 2 coaches leave in the middle, Grubb leaving and having to promote from within. Like, there was a lot of chaos in that first few months of them being here and being on the ground, to where the whole offseason routine, the cadence of the things, just the continuity wasn't there. And it was this whole offseason. Everyone's saying how great it was, how that they're back in that rhythm. Nick Saban on game day is like, he saw the culture. It's better this year. Not that he was trashing it in the past, but it was like, they're moving forward. They're not backpedaling and just trying to patch up the issues that come with any kind of coaching transition. And this year they're moving forward, and it's like they're running through the wall instead of like protecting against it. And then the whole wall fell down on top of their heads on Saturday, and like, all that talk, it almost is used against them now, because the opposite happened. And was the whole thing a lie, is, I guess, the long way of saying everything that's on my mind.
Well, Nick Saban also, let me just point out, used the phrase very disappointing to describe the 2024 season while he was on TV. I thought that was very interesting too. But everything you said is right. Kalen DeBoer in year 2 has done well where he's been. The roster is shaping up. Nobody left during the spring portal window. His recruiting class was fantastic. And he brings in Grubb. Grubb's going to make an impact that nobody even understands, right? Like he's already helping to change the culture. This is going to work without Jalen Milroe, for instance. Like everything you said is right. Now, a lot of people are frustrated with how DeBoer responded on the sideline, how he responded post game, what he said about how they got to do better. Like everybody's saying, hey, there's not enough accountability. DeBoer's not mad enough, right? We know what his temperament is at this point. We know what his personality is. How he's not the most fiery person on the sideline. But Michael, was there anything post game that he said that you found interesting, that you found disappointing? Like, what did you think of what DeBoer had to say in response to the loss?
I mean, he is who he is in that sense. He's not going to suddenly turn into Nick Saban and walk into that post game and throw a microphone against the wall and punch the wall. That's just not who he is, and that's not what people want. It's still not going to be what people want to see and feel. They're going to want to see not Nick Saban level upsetment, but there's got to be some Caitlin level of disappointment in there. That I'm sure in the locker room he's not as diplomatic as he is in front of the cameras and microphones. Maybe it's selling that emotion to a fan base, to a constituency that is sitting on the fence right now, and that's one of the things that people are upset about. So I guess I know it's not him, but sometimes you got to turn it on a little bit. I mean, sometimes Saban turned it on a little bit more than there was some showmanship there that is sometimes forgotten about.
That you brought out of him sometimes. Let's be honest.
Sometimes,
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he kind of has the Eli Manning face syndrome of he doesn't look mad enough on the sideline. Why isn't he chewing somebody out more? I mean, it's all these factors that compound. On their own, they're bad, but when you pile them all together and you put it within the context of 15 years of Nick Saban dominance and everything, like it's really hard to compare to it, and it's looking less and less of like a great fit the more you start thinking about it.
Let's talk about that, Michael. So listen, like if the guy's personality is what it is, like if he doesn't show a lot of emotion, he still gets results, that's one thing, right? And people won't be disappointed when you win, right? Like again, convincing themselves that Kalen DeBoer is going to work, even though he's not from around here and he's not, an SEC guy. If he wins games, they're going to forgive all of that. But if they're losing to double-digit underdogs, several times a year, and then to start the season when you're a national championship contender, at least that's what dopes like us in the media say, then people are going to run out of patience fast. I see all of these clips of like people sharing like Saban getting fired up and like, this is what we need more. Saban's gone, dude. He's gone. The day he retired, it was over. And like, that is something that is hard to accept, right? Like as soon as he was gone, that was it forever. No matter who took his place, it was never going to be like that again. Enjoy those 16 straight years of being in the championship conversation, right? Pretty much all season. From day one, you're either ranked number one and everybody expects it, or by the end, you make the playoff or you're knocking on the door. That's over now. And that's what people have to accept. Is like, if Alabama, like, has the standard changed so much that Alabama is not going to be in the conversation moving forward? I don't think that, boosters and trustees and fans are going to have much patience for games like this moving forward. But then you get into the talk about a total rebuild, right? So my question to you here, do you think that it's possible with the size of Kalen DeBoer's contract and his buyout, and the fact that I'm using the word buyout and other people are already, and it's not just me, Michael, right? Like this is the conversation nationally, locally. People are angry around here. Do you think that it's possible, as we overreact here, that something could happen as soon as this season if they determine that the fit just isn't right?
I mean, if this was 3 years ago, 4 years ago, there would be a better chance of that. But they're also staring down $20.5 million in revenue sharing that's coming out of that budget. I'd have to look at the structure of the contract to see uh, the the due date of of DeBoer's buyout. If it's all due, if it's in monthly installments, or if it's a chunk due within 30 to 60 days, as some of these contracts are structured. I think that probably plays a bigger factor than anything. You can finance a firing much easier than you can um, pay cash and buy a house, if anyone is in the home buying business. So I think that's probably more. That's something I need to look a little closer with the contract. But it's crazy to be sitting here the first game, and I've always been the person who's like, you got to have some patience. You can't this microwave society thing. You can't fire someone right away. I mean, Mike Krzyzewski would have never been who he was at Duke if he was fired after his second season. Frank Beamer at Virginia Tech, all these things. Granted, incredibly different situations they're stepping into, but you start to wonder, what are the systemic issues, what are the overarching issues with this program, with the through lines, with the losses, the makeup of the team, the makeup of the coaching staff. I mean, I think there are steps before the bore. If you're swinging the axe, not naming names, but I mean the defensive side of the ball is something that has to be looked at and be questioned, scheme wise, toughness wise. I mean, it just completely outfoxed by Gus Malzahn, and I know it's a new coordinator, I know it's new personnel, but there's a lot of tape with Gus Malzahn, and I not the total X's and O's guys. I'm not going to break down everything, but I felt like, just from my eye, I feel like those are things I've seen before from Gus Malzahn. I'm sure there was tape of some of these ends around, the misdirection plays. Like, I don't think Gus Malzahn reinvented offense before this game to where there couldn't have been some preparation, because Alabama had all offseason to prepare for this game as well.
Again, though, passion from the players and from the coaching staff, an incentive to win. Gus Malzahn likes beating Alabama and is good at beating Alabama. He's done it, 5 or 6 times now in his career as a coordinator and a head coach. So he was a factor, like it or not. I mean, the guy's tweeting and trolling Alabama at the end of the game feels like old times. Alabama's got to eat that. They got to eat it. There's a lot they got to eat after this game. And so, back to that conversation about moving forward, like, I don't think it's going to happen this year or anything, but I mean, Michael, now as soon as Alabama loses to Florida State, fans are staring at the rest of the schedule, right? And we don't have to get into the weeds of that necessarily, but they're saying this game looks hard. South Carolina looks hard. At Missouri even looks hard now if they get their quarterback back. Georgia obviously is a loss at this point. And so if Alabama has multiple losses before we reach the halfway point of the season, it's going to get dark in Tuscaloosa. It already is in the eyes of a lot of people, and they're talking about riding that momentum, riding that low wave after losing to Vanderbilt, after losing to a bad Michigan team to end the season, to end a disappointing season when they didn't make the playoff, when they could have had they beaten a bad Oklahoma team. So it's not looking good already. But what could the silver lining be here? Is the silver lining the most ideal circumstance that Florida State was a good team, that Florida State, that Mike Norvell, and with bringing Gus Malzahn in and Tommy Castellanos being better than expected, is it possible that a formerly 2-10 team from 2024 is suddenly really good, and this is going to be a good loss for Alabama once they're knocking on the door of the playoff again? Or do you think that Florida State is a rebuilding team and is a bowl eligible team by the end of the year? I mean, like, how do you spin this in a positive way for Alabama at this point?
I mean, that is one of them. The Florida State is. I think everything is being judged on the 2-10 scale. That team did not look like a 2-10 team. That did not look like anything. I mean, last year's Florida State was a husk of itself. I mean, it was absolute embarrassment. So we're all judging it based on that as our starting point. I think they'll be a lot better this year. I don't know if they'll be a national championship team. But have we considered another possibility that just came to my mind? What if this is the ultimate rope-a-dope for Kirby Smart? what if this is a grand scheme to lull Georgia one more time into feeling comfort, and
Okay.
that they're going to go to Athens? They
Yeah.
play ULM on Saturday, which is not always historically not a cakewalk. Um, and then you have Wisconsin, um, not a good Wisconsin team coming. Not going to make any statements there. What if going to Athens, Georgia, is when Kalen DeBoer rips the plastic off this program? It said Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Michigan. That was a huge setup. This is who we are. This is Alabama football, Kalen DeBoer. This is not the Cracker Barrel new logos, back to the old logo. This is Alabama football, and they're going to just run the table. And nobody's going to see it coming because everyone's talking about this Florida State loss. We are all taking the bait. What if?
Wow, amazing, Michael. Like you just sold me completely, ready to run through a wall all over again. Yeah, we'll see. I guess that's what has to happen at this point. But I mean, look, I didn't think that DeBoer was going to come into the press conference and give anything more than, yeah, we tried to play well, we didn't play well. We're going to try to play better next time, and we're going to play hard, and we thought we had a game plan, and it didn't execute, and yeah, you bet, roll tide. Like it's not like fans are not going to be satisfied with like anything that the guy says at this point. They just want results now, and we'll see. Like Louisiana Monroe, maybe they start fresh, like you said. Maybe they execute in ways that they didn't against Florida. Ty Simpson looks like a star, albeit against
Louisiana
competition. But
Monroe, they're a
every win matters at
37 and a
this
half
point.
point favorite. I mean, they're one of the worst teams in the country. I mean, I
Lines
know
don't matter
there's
to
nothing, but there's
should not
nothing. I
matter
don't
to
think
anybody.
I don't think there's anything they can do on Saturday that's going to make anyone feel better. I don't think there's truly anything they could do. They could win 100-0, and they're not, and people are not going to be satisfied. So it's like there's nothing that can be done Saturday. I mean, I'm not sure what you can even do against Wisconsin on next week, but what's
But
up?
stick with that. They're not going to be satisfied. You wrote about the reaction that people are having, right? You have known the Alabama fan base for a really long time. What were your thoughts on how the fan base reacted to all of this? We know how one young man feels. The ABC cameras cut to a guy once the game was in hand, and he was immortalized forever. One finger told the entire story, didn't it? And a lot of other fans seem to feel the same way based on what our producers caught in the field, fans walking out of the Florida State Stadium. But I mean, our Alabama fans, irrational is not the word I'm going to use because yes, any fan base that has had that much success is irrational in terms of their expectations, and that's also fair and understandable in a lot of ways. That's just human nature and psychology. But Michael, what did you think of how the Alabama fans reacted? Because it was full meltdown mode. Are they fair to feel that way?
I've kind of been one to temper some of the overly emotional reactions in the past. I think that there have been some rash decisions or rash anger um, at the end of the Saban era where I didn't think anything was going to make people happy at a certain point. There was only capability of anger and disappointment at a certain point. That there was nothing that was the thrill. It was hard to thrill anybody anymore. That they'd been numb to success, and I guess it kind of annoyed me sometimes with the way the nitpicking for every little thing was some sign of collapse and calamity. Um, that said, on Saturday, don't I don't know if I disagreed with. I don't know if anybody really went too far in my mind with their upset, anger reaction. I think so much of it was justified because it was the compounding factors. It was not that they lost; it's how they lost. And it's the videos that we've seen some analysts break down in the last 24 hours, the last day or so since the game. Some of the jogging, the effort. Uh, Emmanuel Acho, I think, had the video of the first or second, maybe the first touchdown, second touchdown of the game for Florida State, where they were jogging safeties, taking bad angles, taking bad effort. And that's the kind of thing that's just flying through people's minds. I mean, the videos of Reuben Foster and all these other guys that are going through social media as well, where people that this is what they used to have, guys who were just absolute missiles on the field, and then there are safeties now who are jogging like they're on a golf course to the what used to be the scene of the accident. They're not even making contact. I mean, it was the way Florida State did it. It was the way they emasculated Alabama in a sense.
Whew, man, that stings,
I know.
Michael.
I had to think
That one
about that for a
stings.
second.
I mean,
But
but it's true that, I mean, look, and former Alabama players, guys who played for Nick Saban, they're out there publicly not bashing Alabama, but just saying like this isn't the standard, right? Like this isn't Alabama football, right? And so, and there are some too that are like, it's one game. This doesn't define their season, and we'll certainly find out sooner than later. But I look, I don't blame any fan base for melting down after a loss, right? But I think like what people are saying, what you've been saying, like it's the nature of the loss. Like teams win and lose. Nick Saban lost games, right? But Nick Saban teams, you had to bury them, like you had to smack the dirt with the shovel and make sure and like put something on top of it to make sure they didn't, come out of it like a zombie. They competed until the end. Alabama had their chances, right? But like there were just these costly mistakes. And this even happened in Saban's tenure too. These awful penalties during critical situations. The late hit on Tommy Castellanos that the defensive lineman had at the end of the game. I mean, there's big what if sliding door scenarios in this game. I mean, on Florida State's first possession, right when Damani Jackson gets called for defensive holding on a third down stop for Alabama, and this was after Alabama's first drive, 16 play touchdown drive that they had. So if they get the ball back right after one stop, who knows what happens? But it didn't happen. This team just like you said, they got punked out, and it was unfortunate. But I don't know where we go from here, Michael. I mean, I think that the focus will continue to be on DeBoer, and if Alabama can right this ship, you saw the pundits talking about how does this affect their playoff chances. Michael, were we all wrong about Alabama? Like I mentioned earlier in the episode, people saying this is a national championship contender. This is a national title winner. Ultimately, they have all this talent. The roster looks great. Alabama is going to blow out Florida State, and they're going to run through the schedule, and they only have one. Was everybody wrong about this team? Like nobody really knows anything until they start playing football. But how wrong were we, if we were at all?
I hesitate to use the word "we" because not everyone. I mean, I'm not saying I thought Alabama was going to be trash. I picked Alabama to beat Florida State. I also picked them to go 9-3 in a picks column a week or so before the game. I saw this team was a borderline playoff team. I wasn't totally convinced. There were things that I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if the quarterback play was the 5-star that everyone thought he was going to be. And like I said, Ty Simpson's not the reason they lost. He played with heart where not everyone else did. But I always thought they were in between to begin with. And if I was on the fence before, I'm on the other side of the fence of playoff. But I mean, it is the first day of September as we're recording this. To count anybody out in a 12-team era is tough. Because there are opportunities. There are opportunities to be had moving forward.
So but you said not trash. So that's like what an endorsement that Alabama's not trash and won't be trash in 2025, Michael. I think that assuaged a lot of concerns moving forward. But a lot of stats that a lot of people don't want to hear, right? Like the whole Alabama hasn't lost a season opener in like 20 something years or whatever it was. They what was another one that like the non-conference opponent schedule streak is non-conference opponent streak is over. There are more like that. Again, the unranked teams, the 5-5 in the last 10 games. I mean, it's just a lot of really ugly stats that are suddenly dropping in the laps of Alabama fans. And but you mentioned Ty Simpson. The last thing before we go here, Michael, thoughts on Ty Simpson, because they named him the starter pretty early, and there was obviously speculation on how will he do in DeBoer's system. Alabama moves on from Jalen Milroe. A quarterback can flourish in Ryan Grubb and Kalen DeBoer's system. It's one game. You said he played hard, but your impressions of Ty Simpson now and moving forward?
I think he didn't make any mistakes. That's important, I guess. Didn't make mistakes. Wasn't explosive. I mean, he was athletic enough to get away from things. He was running for his life a lot of the time. His offensive line, the protection schemes, plans, whatever, did not do him any favors. I don't think the big play threat wasn't there. Where last year was a high and low. It was like all over the place, but the spectrum was wide. But you had that possibility of at any moment they could pop a big play, and I don't know if I felt at any point during that game that Alabama was ready to pop a big one, that they were going to chuck it deep, that something big was going to happen. Most of their biggest passing plays, if I remember, were shorter throws that were run after the catch. So and not being able to take a top off a defense. If I'm thinking that, I'm sure the defense is thinking that too, and they're scheming. So they're able to play a little closer to the box. They're able to stop that running game. They can be more aggressive in that sense. So they were running all over them. They're physical. I think 7 tackles for loss, 3 sacks. I think 5 official quarterback hurries, but they're probably more. I mean, that's one of those stats. So not all his fault, but he wasn't a game changer. He wasn't a difference maker. That we didn't see that the whole like DeBoer offense, Grubb offense that took Washington to this promised land close to it. So he didn't lose it. He clearly didn't win it. He tried to do one of those Tebow post game. He's a big Tebow guy. It's a tough attempt at like the Tebow speech in the post game. The promise of fans. You know, Florida lost that game by like a field goal or something. It was like Alabama lost this game by 2 touchdowns. Like they weren't just right there, and that they're gonna promise to do something that, you know. I thought that was a tough look, but we'll see. You know, maybe this whole thing was the rope-a-dope Georgia game.
Right.
You're going to see the true Ty Simpson.
We got that in our back pocket. I forgot. Yeah, but I thought Ty Simpson played well. I was not disappointed in him. Were there some plays he probably wanted back? Absolutely. But I'm reassured at least that Ty Simpson is a capable quarterback for Alabama this season. So we'll see moving forward. Here's my very last question, yes or no, Michael. Is Kalen DeBoer coach the Iron Bowl this season?
I mean, yes. I mean, to fire him mid-season. I mean, if he's not coaching the Iron Bowl because of a dismissal, then we're gonna have to change the name of this podcast because it is. Sheesh.
Believe me, Michael, I thought about it before we even started recording this. Yeah, we need a new graphic, maybe. All right, Michael Casagrande, you can find all of his work on AL.com. Great columns, great coverage, fantastic work following this game. Go read it if you haven't. We appreciate it, Michael. Thanks for joining us. All right, I'm Ben Flanagan with AL.com. Find us anywhere you get your podcast, YouTube, Spotify, Apple. Just beat everyone. I'm Ben Flanagan. We'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody. Hang in there.